how to put your real estate plan into place. That's today's episode. Let's dive into it. Hey everyone, welcome into the Investing in Real Estate show. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And together we have rehabbed thousands of homes. We have, I think, nearly 50 buy and hold properties right now that cash flow about $30,000 a month in passive income. We've been real
Try
estate.
40,000, honey.
Oh, 40,000.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I always like these little, it's like finding a $10 bill in your pocket. You don't realize.
You just found $10,000 a month.
Right.
Woohoo!
All right, good. So, yes, we have that kind of passive income, but real estate is the vehicle that we use, but who cares about real estate, right? It's four walls and a roof. We teach you how to find the right properties and all of that on this show. But what we do is we want you to build passive income, hit financial freedom, and the vehicle that we use is real estate to get there. Simple. And today, this is part 4 of our story, our journey. We're going to talk about our plan. So we've gone through my disasters in the early days back during the housing collapse and investing in a Phil Mickelson golf course community and all the craziness. Natalie buying an A-class property in San Francisco and all the problems that that created. And then us hitting rock bottom, losing our jobs, and now the turning point and how putting it all together with a battle plan and how we're going to start to invest in real estate. Am I right?
You are absolutely right. And we are sharing this story in hopes that we can inspire you to build wealth for your family and show you how we did it so that you can come up with your own unique way for how you do it. So we talked about how we both lost our jobs last week. We had this sort of existential crisis inside of our own identities. And we decided, okay, we don't want to be paycheck families anymore. We want to build passive income through performing assets. So we decided to take every dollar that we can and channel it into buying an asset. And one of the quotes that I like so much from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, we talked about how I read that to you on a road trip for a couple of road trips, actually, because it's a bit of a long book. And one of the quotes that stuck with me is that the rich buy assets and the poor buy liabilities. So what we did is we went through our balance sheet and we went through our budget and we figured out how much of the dollars that are coming into our family are being funneled into liabilities. So let's say you have $100. Is a third of it spoken for by your mortgage? That's a liability, not a performing asset. Mm-hmm. Is a third of it spoken for by your groceries? Obviously, those don't perform, right? That's just a bill. Is a third of it then spoken for your car payment, your student loan, your utilities bills, right? Then what of that money are you keeping? None of it, right? That's three thirds is you're getting right up to it. So you have maybe 1% that you can build assets with. So you have to evaluate where your dollars are going and decide no longer do I funnel all of my money into liabilities, because that's just treading water. That's not building anything.
That's the lie that we've been all told, right? Do you buy a house,
right?
You work for somebody else, you funnel money into Wall Street, which is a 401k, and you're paying an enormous amount of taxes, right? So you're paying the government, you're paying a bank for the house you live in, and you're paying Wall Street for the money in your 401k. That is not financial intelligence. That is financial idiocy. And we were doing it. And now we were now coming up with a plan to change all of that, right?
Right. So I just texted Clayton because I want him to really realize how we've built. So what I just sent you was our balance sheet from 2013. This was right after we had our second child. We were just starting to sort of change our perspective on where our money was going.
Look at all these stocks. Oh my God, it makes me sick.
I know, it's crazy, huh? It's like looking at your wedding album or something.
Right. Vanguard, index. Oof. Makes me
right. Okay, but no, click on the third sheet that says balance sheet May 2013.
Okay.
So our daughter was just about to turn 1. And if you look at all of the things in our asset columns, these are not really performing assets. They're assets, but they're not performing assets. Except
what do you mean? So you're saying things like my 401k.
Like Clayton 401k, right? Fidelity investment account. That was not making any amount of money that we could live on. It was sort of pennies, but it was also high fee. Natalie's Bank of America savings account. Clayton's Capital One savings account. And then we have the 529s. We have the house that we lived in, and we have a Jetta and a Ford Escape, right?
Right.
So almost none of these perform at all. We couldn't live off a single one of these performing assets. None of them produced cash flow for us at all. And then if you look at our liabilities here, it's mortgages and car payments, right?
Right.
And it's half. We had 50% liability to assets. Okay. Now I'm going to link you. I'm sorry if everyone else hears the sending of the text. You're going to hear whoop. Okay. Now look at our assets for 2018.
Okay. All
So
right. I'm clicking.
it's
I'm
a big,
clicking.
okay. So it's a big long column, and more than half of them we live off of. We can live off of almost all of them in
Wow.
our asset column.
Wow. So it's a
It's a
dramatic.
humongous, yeah, it's a humongous
So
change,
we
right?
went from, let me just explain that. We went from a whole bunch of like lines on this spreadsheet saying things like Fidelity, Vanguard Fund, all this kind of rigmarole, right? Making Wall Street profitable, to making ourselves profitable by taking that cash that was making Wall Street. We're paying an exorbitant amount of fees, and when the market goes down, you lose everything. To buying actual physical property that is now producing cash flow for us each month. Oh, and it gets even better because now it's a tax shelter in a way that our 401k never was a tax
Right.
shelter. Now it's an
Yeah.
actual tax shelter. We can claim depreciation. We can claim all business expenses because we bought these in an LLC as a business. And this is how you build financial intelligence. This is real wealth building right here. This is amazing to look at.
Yeah. It's really this is your life kind of thing told in numbers. It's like the Matrix. So when I did this balance sheet, it says at the bottom, May 2013. Our daughter was just about to turn 1. It was right around the time that we read this book. And I looked at this and I said, well, these assets, we can't live off of any of them. So we're closer to retiring now than we were 10 years ago, just because we have these sort of few nest eggs scattered around the stock market. And so we really decided that we wanted to funnel our money into performing assets. And we thought, okay, real estate's probably a good way, but we didn't know where to start. We thought, well, should we find a real estate agent? What market should we just go looking for things in our own backyard? And I don't know, how the heck Clayton just really got obsessed with real estate podcasts. So how did you even think of
Well,
that?
in books. I mean, honestly, I heard as a guest somebody in the wholesaling space on, I think, the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast with John Lee Dumas, who then I've been a guest on his podcast since then, which is kind of crazy. And he was like buying off market properties. And I remember just like sort of listening to this strategy thinking, wait a second, this is the answer I've been looking for. Because I was thinking, you don't just call up a realtor to find properties. You're going to pay like above retail price. And then what if it needs an additional $10,000, $20,000 worth of work into it? Now you're above where that is, right? So, I mean, do you want me to tell the airline story, the
I
flight?
think you did in episode 1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did.
Well, I can tell it again now because if you didn't hear that part, I mean, this is what I was listening and kind of gathering up these ideas about real estate investing. I didn't quite know how we would get there, though, right? I wasn't sure exactly where we would go, how we would get there. And I was on this flight to New Zealand. We took the kids out to visit your folks in San Francisco. And then I went from there to visit my friend in New Zealand who's a photographer. And I was only going to be able to be there for 5 days. And on this 16-hour flight, the couple that was sitting next to me on the flight, they're in their 50s. And they asked me, we were descending, right? So we're like on our way down to the tarmac, and we just started talking. And they asked me how long I was going to be on this in New Zealand, and I said 5 days. And they said, "Ooh, 5 days? That's a quick trip." And I said, "Yeah, I don't have much time. I got to get back to work and so forth." And I said, "What about you guys? How long are you going to be in New Zealand?" And they said, "We're going to be here for 2 months." And I said, "What do you do that you can be here for 2 months?" They didn't look retired, And he said, "Oh, I'm a real estate investor." And I said, "Ding, ding, ding! Holy smokes! This is crazy." So I just started picking his brain. I'm like, "Where do you invest?" He's like, "Oh, I invest in the Midwest, not overpriced properties, where most of the country lives." He said, "I'm from California. I would never invest in California. Me and my partner, we buy single family homes. We renovate them. We'll buy them for 25, put $20,000 worth of rehab into them and get them rent ready." He's like, "We don't over upgrade our properties. We're not putting in granite countertops. Don't put in all these extra bells and whistles." He's like, "We get them rent ready. And we get, that means new mechanicals if they need them. We don't update the roof unless it needs it. We, put in new windows if they need it. And then we rent them out to tenants. And we've got a lot of properties." And he said, "So while I'm here in New Zealand, that cash flow from those properties will be keeping my wife and I happy. And she just kind of laughed and she said, yeah, it's great. The cash, the passive income comes in from these properties while we're traveling, and we work for ourselves. And and he said, I only focus on ROI, return on investment. I don't care about real estate. Don't fall in love with like the adorable little bungalow. Just buy 4 walls and a roof and get it cash flowing. And I was like, God, someone just gave me like, that's it. The secret formula right there. And when I landed, remember you were like, honey, how was your flight? And I called you on FaceTime audio and you could barely hear me because we had such a bad connection. And what was I saying?
You were like, blah, 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 real estate. We're going to do this and buy more. And I was like, okay. I just figured you were jet lagged and talking all kinds of nonsense. I mean, I only heard every other word and I was like, yeah, all right. But by the time you got back, you had already, done some Googling, figured out this market you wanted to start in, and you found a real estate investor who helped, or a real estate agent who helped you identify off-market properties. He was great. He was one of the few real estate investors who are really used to, or agents rather, who were used to working with investors and knew how to find them great deals. Not all agents know this. In fact, they don't really even teach it in real estate school. I'm a licensed real estate agent, and I think it's like they barely speak about investors. Like, just maybe they graze over
No,
it.
they're focused on
Mostly a real
retail.
estate. Yeah, they're supposed to help you find a primary home. They're good at that. But for investments, it's really hard to find one that knows what you want and knows how to help you find ROI. So Clayton was lucky enough to find a guy,
In
and
Michigan.
then in Michigan, right? And we found these 2 properties. Clayton paid cash for them. And we found a guy we knew, his brother was a contractor who rehabbed them. It took him a really long time. The properties we buy now don't take nearly this long. I think it was like 2.5 months. And we paid him in cash. And it was a lot of work. It took a really long time and it was expensive. But when we finally got renters in there, I think they were on the market for like 3 weeks before we found tenants. And Clayton was really nervous during those 3 weeks. And then you got an email from the property management company saying, we have secured tenants in both of your properties. They move in next week and rent will start at the end of the month. And I remembered I was on the elliptical. We were at the gym and you were off in the weights, clearly.
Clearly, you see
And
these guns?
right. And I remember you saying, we got it. And I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't even know what you were talking. I didn't know that this was bothering you so much. You were good at hiding that from me. And so I was like, what are you talking about? And you're like, come here. So we met in the middle where the weights meets the cardio machines, remember? And you were in tears and you're like, I did it. Like, we have this passive income now. Even your mom had texted you, was like, your dad and I are really worried that you spent all this money on these properties, like they really felt like, oh no, here goes Clayton again. Because you had already lost everything in real estate investments before. And they're like, oh son, what are you doing?
Right. And,
And
it's funny this time though, that like, okay, I'm really waiting on just this one moment of letting me know that they're rented. Right. But it's totally different than my previous investments because I purchased real assets this time. Before, I invested in some speculative land project that didn't even exist. Here, I actually invested in like these small, homes in Michigan that 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, that needed some work. And yes, I paid more for the rehabs than I should have. I upgraded and didn't take the advice of my airline friends, and I put more bells and whistles into it than I needed to. I even was like, at one point, I'm like, should I put a Nest thermostat in there for them? Because maybe they'd want to control it from their smartphone. And my contractor was like, no, you shouldn't. And these kinds of, but the difference is, the point is that these were actual assets. They existed. So what was the worst that could happen? I could have a vacancy for not 3 weeks, but 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. Even that's not the end of the world because I paid for them with cash. So I'm not paying a mortgage. You know what I mean? But it was totally different. So that fear was not necessarily founded at all. But it was weighing on me because I felt like I had been such a failure through most of my life with wanting to do these types of things, with wanting to make a difference for me and my family. And when I saw that this properties that I discovered based on my flight to New Zealand, they taught me where to buy. Now, don't overpay. I bought like a short sale. When you can buy short sales, you can't even find them anymore. I bought a foreclosure, and it needed a lot of work. And It worked. Like, people do this that don't go to college, and
Yeah.
they're millionaires, and they live on they live on passive income, and they don't have to have a PhD.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why do you got to poop on college?
Well, because they don't teach financial education. They don't
Okay.
teach financial literacy. They teach you how to work for somebody else.
All right. I get where you're going with that. Yes. But a lot of real estate investors do go to college, and you can learn a lot in college too. But yeah, you don't,
How many wealthy PhDs do you know?
I have to think on that. I'm not
Right,
just
yeah.
going to
Good
throw the
luck.
PhD under the bus.
Good luck.
I will think on that, and I will get back to you.
Okay.
So in the next episode, we're going to talk to you how we went from these 2 properties that we bought to now 50. That I think is going to be a long episode because it's not
There's a
just
lot of
any one
pieces.
way.
I mean,
We
there's a
went
lot. Yeah.
we used many tricks in our toolbox, and but yes, sort of aligning ourselves philosophically and having that first win and realizing, oh my gosh, every month now this money comes in and we don't have to work for it. We just own this performing asset was huge, right? So we went from that balance sheet I texted you in the beginning of the episode to now what we've got now. It's been a really fun journey, and we're going to tell you how we did it.
That's right. So that's coming up on the next episode. We hope you suffered through our little battle plan here on how we got started. So what I always want to say to you is, use this as our plan. This is one way to build wealth. We did it with single family properties. This was our strategy. We followed it through. We've helped a lot of our investors who've bought properties through our team do it the same way and achieve financial freedom. If you have another way that you'd like to do it, you want to invest in billboards or cow or cattle futures or something like that, that's great. This is the way that we did it.
Local organic farming is
Right.
something that Tom Wheelwright talks about actually at the end of his book.
Right.
Don't laugh. He
I'm not
actually
laughing.
talks about how it's an amazing tax shelter because this is what the government wants is local organic farms.
Right. So you want
So
to do that? Go ahead.
that could be your way. I'm sure there are people who get rich off of that. We don't know how. We have no podcasts about that.
We built wealth on single family properties, and that's what we've done to great success. So that's what we teach here. So there's a huge arsenal of information in this channel, and I hope you will sit down, share it with friends and family, and make a difference in your life because it's all here, exactly how we did it. Now, I want you to go out there, take action, become a real estate investor. It's the #1 way to build wealth in this country. We'll see you back here on the part 5 of our story. Bye, everyone.
Sayonara.